June 26, 1944. Hollandia Air Base, Dutch New Guinea. The checkerboard was left mid-game while Lieutenant Colonel Charles MacDonald glanced up from his match. The individual at his screen door had just identified himself, although the name had not immediately registered with MacDonald. His attention remained on his ongoing contest with Lieutenant Colonel Merrill Smith, the operations officer for Satan's Angels. The civilian calmly repeated his name with a quiet assurance that made MacDonald hesitate. Charles Lindbergh, the same Charles Lindbergh, the most renowned aviator in America, stood in a temporary recreation hall situated thousands of miles from the United States, seeking permission to talk about P-38 combat missions. Neither of the two realized that this encounter would ultimately transform the future of long-range fighter missions in the Pacific. Over 6 weeks, Lindbergh's instruction would broaden the Lockheed P-38 Lightning's combat range by close to 400 miles, turning an idea once thought unattainable into ordinary operational practice. The account of a civilian advisor doubling the range of America's top twin-engine fighter is more than a straightforward technical feat. It is a chronicle of resistance from within being overturned by undeniable results, pilots coming to have faith in calculations rather than gut instinct, and the unique knowledge of one man about fuel economy altering the trajectory of air combat in the Pacific. The mathematical elements of range extension were being established, not through theoretical texts, but through airmen's daily practice, as they discovered that all their prior engine management instruction was lacking. What had previously seemed unbelievable was soon to be everyday, under the guidance of a 42-year-old civilian who had only first piloted a P-38 3 days before. The journey to that screen door at Hollandia had started 17 years previously, above the Atlantic. Between May 20 and 21 Stone, 1927, Charles Augustus Lindbergh revolutionized aviation by completing a solo flight of 3,600 miles from New York to Paris in 33.5 hours. The aircraft he piloted, a Ryan NYP monoplane named the Spirit of St. Louis, was equipped with 450 gallons of fuel stored in tanks so massive they obstructed his forward visibility. Using a periscope and the method of dead reckoning for navigation, Lindbergh managed his fuel usage with meticulous precision that most other pilots of the period might have considered excessive. He touched down at Labor Field with 85 gallons of fuel still in reserve, achieving a level of fuel efficiency deemed unattainable for a Wright Whirlwind radial engine by contemporary specialists. That dedication to precise fuel management would become the hallmark of Lindbergh's technical prowess. Over the course of the 1930s, while conducting survey flights across both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans for Pan American Airways, Lindbergh honed techniques that increased operational ranges well beyond the boundaries set by manufacturers. He recognized that published range statistics were averages, not maximums. Each engine possessed a specific optimal range in which power, fuel consumption, and mechanical wear were perfectly balanced. Identifying this zone required a grasp of how manifold pressure, propeller RPM, mixture adjustment, and indicated airspeed interacted, skills that went well past ordinary training. By 1944, Lindbergh stood among the world's authorities on extended flight, although his ties with the U.S. military were strained by his advocacy of pre-war isolationism. He strongly opposed American entry into European hostilities, became the leader of the America First Committee, and incurred the enmity of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. After President Roosevelt compared him publicly to Clement Vallandigham, a Confederate sympathizer from the Civil War, on April 29, 1941, Lindbergh gave up his commission as a colonel in the Air Corps Reserve. When the attack on Pearl Harbor brought the U.S. into the conflict, Lindbergh sought to return to the Army Air Corps. President Roosevelt made certain that Lindbergh would not be permitted to serve in uniform for the duration of the war. Nevertheless, Lindbergh's skills found a path forward. Barred from military service as an officer, he took on work as a civilian technical advisor for airplane companies. In 1943, he began working with United Aircraft Corporation, focusing on their Chance Vought division, creators of the F-4U Corsair. He also contributed at Ford's Willow Run factory by addressing B-24 Liberator assembly issues. Lindbergh also piloted hazardous high-altitude test flights in P-47 Thunderbolts, gathering data on engine function. Additionally, he helped pioneer methods for dive bombing with the Corsair. His technical input was profound, though Lindbergh longed for direct battle experience. By the start of 1944, he saw a chance to pursue this goal. United Aircraft was interested in exploring the potential of a modern twin-engine fighter, with the Lockheed P-38 Lightning being the only American type in that class. Lindbergh persuaded United Aircraft to have him sent to the Pacific as a technical observer of P-38s in actual combat situations. On April 3, 1944, Lindbergh made preparations for his trip to the South Pacific. He stopped at Brooks Brothers in New York to obtain a naval uniform without any rank markings. He also purchased a compact New Testament from Brentano's bookstore and noted in his diary, "Since I can only take a single, very small book, that is my selection. A decade ago, it wouldn't have been, but my increased reading and learning have left it unrivaled." Departing San Diego on April 24, he was officially en route to Marine Corps airfields in the South Pacific region near Guadalcanal. The assignment was sanctioned by the Navy Department yet deliberately withheld from the White House. Neither President Roosevelt nor Navy Secretary Frank Knox was made aware that Lindbergh was traveling to the combat zone. An initial observation task evolved when Marine Corps aviation officers asked Lindbergh to participate as an observer during combat flights. On May 21, 1944, Lindbergh took part in his debut combat sortie, joining Marine Fighting Squadron 222 for a strafing mission near the Japanese garrison at Rabaul. The Marines referred to the mission as observation. However, Lindbergh flew with his weapons ready, attacking targets whenever an opportunity arose. He swiftly displayed hands-on skill that surpassed theoretical knowledge. Collaborating with Corsair pilots, he instructed them on how to safely launch with bomb loads twice the F-4US recommended maximum. The Marines had been experiencing aircraft losses due to overweight takeoff mishaps. Lindbergh's thorough review of power usage, takeoff velocities, and balance decreased accidents and improved strike effectiveness. News circulated throughout the Pacific region that the renowned aviator was operating as a civilian in combat missions and resolving operational difficulties that had baffled military pilots for months. By the middle of June 1944, Lindbergh became interested in the P-38 Lightning. United Aircraft's enthusiasm for twin-engine fighters was authentic. Lindbergh had also learned that the 475th Fighter Group, known as Satan's Angels, was among the premier Lightning units in the Pacific. If he wished to become familiar with the P-38, that was the ideal unit to join. On June 15, 1944, Lindbergh secured a ride to Finchen, New Guinea. He made his arrival known at 5th Air Force Headquarters in Nadsab, where Colonel Marion Cooper shared a meal with him. The evening of Sunday, June 18, Lindbergh had dinner with General Enos Whitehead, talking about New Guinea events and his intention to observe P-38 missions. The approval was unofficial, informal, and failed to meet formal military requirements. However, in the ever-changing leadership structure of the Southwest Pacific area, personal relationships and proven abilities often outweighed official documentation. On June 20, Lindbergh spent an hour and 20 minutes undergoing checkout in a P-38 with the 35th Squadron of the 8th Fighter Group. This occasion marked his initial flight in the characteristic twin-boom aircraft. On June 26, he traveled to Hollandia and entered while Lieutenant Colonel MacDonald was engaged in a game of checkers. MacDonald, at 29 years old, was already an ace with 10 victories. He led the 475th Fighter Group, which had begun in Australia on May 14, 1943, and by then had evolved into one of the top-scoring P-38 outfits in the region. The unit's three squadrons, the 431st, 432nd, and 433rd, operated the newest P-38J variants, equipped with superior intercoolers and more fuel storage. These Lightnings had the greatest range of any fighters in the Pacific, able to perform flights that no other planes could accomplish. Despite carrying drop tanks, the P-38's effective range remained finite. Strikes against far-off targets left only minimal fuel for air combat maneuvers, forcing pilots to return to base with fuel supplies that were often dangerously low. Some planes were lost when adverse weather created longer routes that surpassed their fuel limits. McDonald at first dismissed Lindbergh courteously and resumed his checkers game. However, when Lindbergh mentioned that General Hutchinson, commander of the 3rd Air Task Force, had directed him to discuss P-38 combat operations, McDonald began to listen. After a short exchange, McDonald inquired whether Lindbergh would be interested in flying a mission the following day. Lindbergh accepted. The mission was scheduled to depart at dawn. Instead of returning to headquarters, McDonald proposed that Lindbergh stay at the 475th camp to avoid transportation issues. As Lindbergh made himself comfortable on the extra cot, the news quickly circulated throughout the unit. Charles Lindbergh was set to fly with Satan's Angels. The pilots' reactions varied. Lieutenant John Purdy from the 433rd Squadron was eager to meet the famed flyer. Some were dubious. A few wondered if a renowned 42-year-old civilian was capable of handling current combat aircraft. Major Thomas Maguire, already credited with 15 victories and destined to end the war as the nation's second leading fighter ace with 38 confirmed kills, was interested to see how the older man would fare. On June 27, 1944, in the early morning, Lindbergh got ready for his debut P-38 combat flight. The weather was unfavorable, with rainfall continuing at 0530 hours. By 10:30, when takeoff finally happened, the conditions had become better. McDonald led a flight of 4 planes targeting Jeffman Island and Smart Airfield, both usual assignments for the 475th. Lindbergh took the position of Blue 3, flying on Maguire's wing. The last aircraft in the formation was operated by Merrill Smith, already an ace with 8 confirmed kills. McDonald observed as Lindbergh smoothly moved into perfect formation alongside Maguire. Considering he had only recently trained on the P-38, his skill in formation flying was impeccable. The operation called for strafing an enemy barge located in Kibos Bay. Lindbergh maneuvered through flak while his cannon and machine guns battered the barge. The sortie was a success, with all 4 planes landing safely. Yet what the crew chiefs discovered post-landing would turn out to be more important than the combat itself.